Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, you guys, this is from ABC News Australia. I believe this is new. Scientology president's daughter slams toxic church. Wait until you hear about all the child abuse.
Scarlett Hannah was born into Scientology's elite. Her mother, Vicky Dunstan, is the president of the church in Australia. Her father, Mark Hannah, is a former director of public affairs. As members of the Sea Org, Scientology's elite unit, they sign billion-year contracts dedicating themselves to the cause. But according to Scarlett Hannah, this kind of dedication came at a cost to the children of the Sea Org, who grew up in what was known as the Cadet Org.
The best way I can describe it is cattle. We were property of the organisation, although they would like to say that we weren't, we were.
Children of Sea Org members.
Look at that, once again. Once again. This does seem a little dated to me, but let's just keep going.
Rarely had contact with their parents. Scarlett Hannah says they lived in separate homes.
There's the wording again. Says they rarely had contact with their parents. Why would that be? That would be because the parents gave them up. Period.
And were granted only 20 minutes each night with their parents.
I can't describe it. It was just an incredibly lonely childhood. I had no one to talk to or to look after me or to ask me how I was after school or...
I believe that was similar to Jenna Miscavige's story, and so many of them. But nobody knows anything, do they?
You know, any of those things that most of us take for granted.
The Cadet Org was eventually disbanded around 8 years ago, after Sea Org members were banned from having children. Until then, Cadet Org members lived in townhouses like this one.
It's probably one of the most overcrowded buildings that we lived in. There's probably up to about 25 kids.
Being looked after by one nanny?
One nanny.
That's really sad. You can see her PTSD. It's so sad to me.
What about children? Do you ever see them? Oh, that's right. L. Ron Hubbard didn't believe parents were good for children.
Sheila Huber is a former executive establishment officer at the Church of Scientology in Los Angeles. At the age of 16, she signed up to the Sea Org. One of her first jobs was as a nanny.
I couldn't believe it. It was wall-to-wall cribs. There were...
Well, that just dated it. I'm guessing this was approximately 2009, 2010.
just under 30 children, and they were under my sole care. I had no training. I had never really spent much time babysitting young ones like that, and they were all under the age of 3 years old.
Sheila Huber says around 30 infants were crammed into a one-bedroom apartment.
They never...
30 infants crowded into a one-bedroom apartment. So that means the parents were dropping the babies off, or perhaps they didn't even have contact with their babies. Maybe it's the baby's fault, right?
got outside. Actually, they got out once. In 8 months, they got out once. And that took 3 months to get that approved. Sorry, it's hard. We took them in a van, the children, and took them to the park, and they spent so much time in their cribs day after day, night after night, that they wouldn't go in any space larger than the size of their cribs. They were terrified. They were terrified of...
Like a caged animal. Have you guys ever heard the story of this... Sorry, I had to sneeze. Have you ever heard about the circus? I think it's a circus elephant, or elephants that they put like a chain onto, onto their leg. And then they move around only in that little circle. And then sometimes these elephants are freed. And they don't move anywhere else. It's the same thing. It's just heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. This would be the first generation Scientologists that have nothing on record to say they were sorry for how they treated their children. Or they might even have a lawsuit that they try to sue Scientology, stating it was Scientology's fault for the death of their children. And I'm not going to go too deep into that.
Sunlight.
Scarlett Hannah says children growing up in the cadet org in Australia did not receive adequate food or medical care. She says community services visited on 2 occasions, but were deceived by the church.
The furniture was dismantled by...
My question is, were they really deceived? Come on, you guys. This requires this level of abuse and neglect, corporal punishment, malnourishment, neglect, psychological abuse. Just to name a few, requires the participation of a lot of people. We really need to, I never believed it. You know how she said the authorities were deceived, or someone said the authorities were deceived? They were never deceived. They were paid.
A division within the Sea organisation that deals with labour, and the kids were sent out for the day to as a peer that they were living to according to crowding laws.
The same thing happens in a lot of governmental organizations. They do it at the nursing homes, they do it in hospitals, building inspectors. They always get a so-called tip-off.
Sarah McClintock, a member of the Church of Scientology, rejects every single allegation made by Scarlett Hannah.
What I experienced with Scarlett, she was a very good friend of mine. I grew up with her.
Deny, deny, deny. Remember, there's no loyalty. Zero. Zero loyalty. Just to L. Ronnie Hubbard, the drug addict, failed military loser, black-toothed potbelly scumbag, liar, fake guru that believes kissing a 7-year-old girl on the lips from a grown adult man passionately is something that is okay to do. Henceforth, adults in small bodies. Wonder how old this one is.
And what she is saying, I did not experience. So I don't know where she's coming from with such things. It really doesn't make any sense to me because I grew up with her. I was there with her. And I think people are giving her things to say personally.
For Scarlett
How's that for projection?
Hannah, the worst part of her time in the cadet org was the enforced separation from her parents. Her father, Mark Hannah, was twice sent to the US to the RPF. Scientology's rehab.
At this point, you guys, I often wonder when people are sent to the RPF. You just never know, do you? Remember how Serge Delmar talked about he was sent to the RPF with his perpetrator? Inquiring MF minds want to know.
Rehabilitation program. According to Scarlett, her father's crime was failing to prevent a negative story about Scientology from appearing on TV.
He was gone for several years, probably about two or 3 years.
What impact did that have on you to lose your father like that for 2 to 3 years and not knowing when he would be back?
Well, at the time I was living in a separate house to my mother. I wasn't seeing my mother at all at family time. She would wake me up at midnight and walk me down to her house so I could sleep with her. I lost my father. I had no one to talk to. It was very humiliating because the RPF was a place where the bad guys went. You know, if your father went to the RPF, he was seen as a criminal.
Do you consider...
It's just punishment after punishment after punishment after punishment. Do you guys see the layers? How they keep people's minds controlled?
Taking someone's parent away for a couple of years and putting them into a rehabilitation unit in another country to be a form of abuse?
Well, I think, again, that's their personal family matter.
Is it a form of abuse to do
Well,
that?
I don't know what to say to that, I'm sorry.
Well,
You see how they always do that? It's a personal matter. Every time people commit crimes in Scientology, when they're caught and they have to go to jail, you know, finally, because that takes a whole long time for that to happen, they will say, oh, that person committed the crime individually. They always do that. Everything that Scientology does, they do like in a legal way to get out of any type of liability. It's all they do. Fake religion. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. Watch your eyes.
it's an organisation that you're speaking for here,
Yeah.
and it's an organisation who has routinely done that to parents and their children. Is it a form of abuse?
Well, I don't actually agree that it's been routinely done. And I think in that instance, in that family, you would have to speak to those, to the father and the mother as to why they lived like that, why they chose to take that.
That's good mind control, you gotta say, right? Very good mind control. Do you guys remember, well, anyone who's old enough to remember, back in the day, sit, ubu, sit? This is how this lady is acting, like she's trained, like a trained doggy. No offense, or maybe I do want offense, I don't know. You guys get what I'm saying. Anyone that we see in front of the cameras, they're trained on what to say. Some of them, in my opinion, from what I've seen, are psychopaths. I won't say names, you guys should probably know who I'm talking about. The one who said he was trying to help people.
Action.
The dumpster.
But based on her experiences in the US, Sheila Huber says there's little choice involved.
I get surrounded by 8 grown men, grown Sea Org members, 8 grown men in a circle.
Huh, you gotta wonder if Rathburn and Rinder were there, huh? Oh, but Rinder's such a good guy.
Around me, telling me I'm now going to the RPF. I can really relate to Scarlett's story, and this is something that to this day, I still have nightmares about this. And we're talking this, I was on the RPF in 1986. I still have nightmares because I felt I deserted my son. My son, who I had full legal custody of, was illegally taken from me and given to my ex-husband because he was a Sea Org member in good standing.
Sheila Huber was separated from her 5-year-old son for a year. She was sent to the RPF for having sex with someone she wasn't married to.
You see that? They're always into everyone's sex life, including children that are hard, you know. I mean, I'm not saying children have a sex life, but this is also boundary crushing. I would call it enmeshment. Like there's zero boundaries in Scientology. I know other cults do the same thing, but I'm not studying the other cults right now. That's everything they do is like not allowing people any privacy whatsoever, being involved in their sex life. It's crazy.
She was unmarried at the time. At the age of 13, Scarlett Hannah was kicked.
But you guys know what is one thing that they don't have, the men in Scientology don't have any problem whatsoever, is R-ing the women and R-ing the young girls. We know this. So I guess it doesn't matter if those women are unmarried or not, does it? Just R them. Cover it up. Tell them that they're out 2D, that they pulled it in. And then send the woman who was R'd to the RPF. Not that Sheila Huber, that was her experience, but it could have been. You never know.
Out of the cadet org and sent to live with adults from the Sea Org in this home in inner Sydney.
Sent to live with adults. Not her parents. Nothing could go wrong there, could it? And I believe a lot of these people that come forward, there's probably more to their stories. Come on. It's a pedo wonderland.
Basically, I was living unsupervised from, 9 in the morning to 12 at night to midnight. At the time, I was going to a very rough school, probably one of the roughest schools in Sydney. I was being bullied and bashed, and so I just stopped attending school. My parents didn't know a thing about it at the time. I started hanging.
One must ask themselves, why didn't her parents know that she was being bullied? Is it everybody else's fault besides the parents?
Out in parks because I was so socially isolated, and this led me to being raped by a convicted murderer and running away.
Despite her experiences, Scarlett doesn't blame her parents.
I think they're part of the organisation, they were part of the machine. I think the church had some very toxic ways of managing its staff, and
it's my opinion that is a trauma bond.
Children, and I definitely blame the church as an organisation, not my parents at all.
How could you know what you're doing?
Scarlett
Trauma bond.
Hannah has been under immense pressure not to tell her story. Her father has even threatened to sue her. Scarlett Hannah decided to speak out after seeing the Four Corners program on Scientology.
I just think that the church needs to take some accountability for, what it was involved in.
But what is the church? The church consists of people that are members of the church. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I hate all Scientologists. How do all these crimes happen? How does all the abuse of the children happen? It wouldn't happen without all these little spikes of the wheel making it go around and around.
Maybe apologise to some of these people that have had, such traumatising experiences.
Like your own children.
Scarlett Hannah's parents declined to be interviewed for this story. Steve Kinane, Late Line.
I don't know. I mean, some people are going to get their karma. And if you have parents or adults in Scientology that regret the things they've done, there's ways to repair. That's all. I mean, after doing as much research as I have on this abuse of children, this child trafficking, and there's no accountability whatsoever, which is very narcissistic in nature to begin with. I don't know what goes on beyond closed doors, It's not for me to know. But there needs to be some type of, compensation. Something. Okay, I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.